All right, so we are live and we already have 19 people on this stream. Hello, everybody. Hello
Hello.
to everybody on the stream, wherever you have joined from. My name is Vikas. I'm the founder of HWP, and today we have a very special guest with us, Jean Baptiste, all the way from France. Hey, Jean, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. You can call me JB. I know my name is pretty complex to pronounce, so usually people call me JB, which makes things way more easier.
Yeah, I think thanks for sharing that. So JB, um, if you don't know who JB is, and if you don't know, then where you are right now, even if you don't know. So so JB is the founder, co-founder, JB.
I'm the co-founder. Yeah, we were two
Okay,
co-founders.
so co-founder of WP Media, and one of very popular plugin is WP Rocket. So I not if you are living under the rock and if you have not heard about WP Rocket, it's one of the most popular caching plugin, speed plugin, performance plugin, whatever you want to call it, for WordPress, and we have been using it on our website as well. And I believe thousands and millions of agencies and websites are using WP Rocket. So, JB, thanks for joining in. Can you give a little bit of introduction of where do you come from and how did you get started with WP Rocket? How did you
Yeah.
like think about creating this plugin?
Yeah. So initially, I was mostly working around SEO. So that was more or less my specialty, and how make WordPress faster, because I did create some websites, some, let's say, popular website with a lot of traffic. And at that point, and it was like a long time ago, more than 10 years, it was very complex into WordPress to have a lot of traffic, because things change a lot. And I work quite a lot on how to improve WordPress performance to make sure that we can have a lot of traffic on it. And in the same time, I was working in an agency with Jonathan, my co-founder, and he was a developer, and he was also very good at WordPress and making WordPress faster. And at that point, we were not super happy about the caching plugin, which was existing, because they were a bit too complex for us and not necessarily working very well. There were no support, and people were a bit lost. And even ourselves, as developers, we were a bit lost because there were way too much configurations. Yeah, it was basically way too technical, and this was great tools, but only for developers. And that can be good. But in the same time, if you think about WordPress, people who use WordPress are everyone, like developers, of course, but people who are not necessarily super good into tech things. And at the end, they just wanted a website. So the idea we had was just to, yeah, how can we put all our knowledge of web performance, of how to make websites and WordPress faster into one simple plugin. And so that's how we thought about WP Rocket. And it was extremely basic and extremely simple at the very beginning, like 10 years ago. Of course, with time, we had more features, we had more options. So today it's way more complex, and we want still to make it simpler. But that's what's really our goal, is how we can make a WordPress caching plugin and performance plugin, which is super simple to use, because our vision is, yeah, people should spend their time on, yeah, use their WordPress website, create content, sell something into their website, but not configure a caching plugin to make it faster. So that's our job, to help them having faster websites. Your mic is mute.
So yeah, thanks for that. So I totally get it. Means configuring a plugin like a caching plugin should be the last thing owner a webmaster should do, right? So thanks for sharing that story. This is 10 years now. That's big.
Yes,
Um,
that's quite a long time for WordPress ecosystem, let's say.
let's do a hands-on. Let's do like a check on our people who have joined us. Show of hands, how many people have used Rocket, WP Rocket, or using Rocket right now? Can you just comment? In the meantime, we'll just see who is online. So Arnie, Bart, hey everybody. Alex, we have audience from all over the world. Danny from South Korea, David from France, um, Tech Sector from Brazil, um, Erloan, is that right? I think he's from France as well,
Yeah,
right? That
a
name.
famous person in France who is really focused on web performance.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, yeah, we know him, let's say, quite well.
Oh, nice, nice. Thanks for joining in. Hendrik from Ireland, David from US, Springfield, Mike says yes, so he has used or using. Alex says not yet, maybe soon, maybe after the call today. Uh, Ani has used it, and Bart is using it on over 100 sites. I think you have a very nice agency plan, right,
Yes,
David?
we have an unlimited license plan. So basically, it's for agencies who has a lot of websites, and we wanted also to make things easier for agencies on not counting how much websites, having something very affordable, even if you have a lot of websites that you are reselling to your clients.
Got it. Got it. All right. So, um, before we move further, I have like one question which has been bothering me for some time. This is 2024, right? Means people are aware about performance. Developers are aware about performance, theme developers, plugin developers. What is the trend you are seeing right now? Do we even need a caching plugin? I know that's a loaded question. So, sorry for putting you on the spot on that.
Yeah. So for me, and I think it has been true 10 years ago, but today it's even more true because web and let's say web development and WordPress is getting way more complex in terms of interaction, in terms of JavaScript you add. So all our WordPress website has been more complex, has been more, let's say, bigger with more interaction, more things. And at the end, even if there are a lot of exports into WordPress, and also into the person who are developing plugin and themes, at the end, if you don't do anything, your website is going to be super slow, and it's not going to pass Google Core Web Vitals. If you don't have a performance plugin, because now that's the issue. If you only have a caching plugin which do only caching, it's not going to be enough. Especially, if you are not a developer and your job is just to install WordPress, install a theme, different plugins. At the end, your website will be slow. Of course, you can say, yeah, it's not a problem if my website is slow, but I mean, it's going to affect your users quite a lot. It's going to affect your SEO. So if you don't care about SEO, about having a good ranking on Google, if you don't care about your users, don't install a caching plugin or don't care about web performance. But if you
But
care about
then
users,
the question also comes into the picture that if people go to Wix, if people go to Webflow, Shopify, they don't need to install a caching plugin,
no,
right?
that's right.
Or but they get 100 out of 100 in Core Web Vitals there, or they still need to do some hire an agency and do stuff?
There will be some work, but most of the work is done by the platform. And the thing with Wix or things like that, they control everything. It's like Apple, they control all the platform, which means that there is some kind of quality, and they are, let's say, probably a bit more focused on performance because that's their image. So they need to make sure that everything is working well. I think Shopify, if we're going into a bit into the technical things, is delivering WebP since many years, which is something WordPress doesn't really do. I mean, it's doing, but it's not totally implemented. So the platform can have a lot of impact on web performance. And while WordPress is doing a lot into the core, there are a lot of things being done into performance. It's still open, and you can install, and that's great. You can install themes which has been developed like 10 years ago, and probably this is going to work, but it's not necessarily optimized for performance. So that's also why you need to make sure to take care about performance. And that's the thing about WordPress. You need to take care about a bit of everything,
Right.
and that's a weakness in the same time of WordPress.
Yeah, I think the flexibility, what it offers, different plugin vendor, different theme vendors, they cannot, I guess, communicate on a single protocol. That's
Yeah.
where you come in, and then you solve the standard issues which we see in these days. So with that being said, JB, why don't you shall we get started on the presentation and
Yeah.
give something to our audience for today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot. So just to give a context about, I mean, most of the people know WP Rocket, but just to put some perspective about where we are today with WP Rocket. So we have, let's say, almost 200,000 customers. We are working to achieve these numbers, but more importantly, we have almost 4 million websites, and in general, we have more than
That's
one
impressive.
website per minute being added into WP Rocket. So we're expanding quite a lot, and lots of people are using our caching plugins. But the point is to talk a little bit about Core Web Vitals, and that's the goal of this presentation, and to talk more about web performance, because I'm not going to talk that much about Core Web Vitals, because we'll see a bit later. My point is it's way too much complex. And of course, if you're a front-end developer, that makes sense. But if you are just an end user, it's going to be way more complex. So that's why also I want to take opportunity to talk more about the basics of web performance, which will, of course, affect the Core Web Vitals. And of course, don't hesitate, Vikas, to just stop me if I'm talking too much, or if you have...
Sure. I'll try to keep asking questions in between. Thank you.
So the first thing is I want to give a bit more of context and history about Google and how Google was measuring performance. A long time ago, I don't remember exactly the years, but when we launched WP Rocket, and for several years, this was what happened. Google was only measuring the good practice. And when I say Google, it was their tools, PageSpeed tools. So you were putting your website and they were giving you a grade. And this grade was only related to good practice. So how many requests do you have on your website? What are the image format? Are your image optimized? Do you have compression? What are the cache policies? So that they did all an algorithm in order to put a grades based on that. That was good. That was a great step, but that was not working. Well. And we have been very opposite at the beginning to Google PageSpeed, us as WP Rocket, because it was creating so much issues and so much conflicting things. Our point was, yeah, you can have all the good practices, but your website can be slow. And most of the time, having a website with good practice means your website is fast, and the opposite is true, but that was not necessarily the case. And we have so many users of WP Rocket or other things who are contacting us saying, yeah, my website is super slow, and because they're seeing a bad page speed score. But the reality is their website was super fast, their experience was super good, but they had some specific good practice which was not on their website because of some reason, and it was not possible to have. And at the end, they had a really bad grade. And so that was super, in a way, super confusing for people. They didn't understand, and they really think that their website was slow. And that was really not the case. And at the opposite, you could have like 100 on Google PageSpeed, but your website could have been super slow. So that was really something very bad, and we have been super vocal about Google. We wrote a lot of blog posts about why you shouldn't care about your page speed score and why this doesn't matter. That's been hard because you can't beat Google, and I mean they were too big, and people were just referring to that. And after a few years, they did some change. Of course, not because of us, but because they understand that web performance is not about good practices.
Maybe a lot of people spoke about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people complained about that. So slowly they move more into putting more metrics, and by metrics is really measuring how fast your website is. And they introduced two things, which is FCB, is the first contentful paint. Again, it's in a way technical, but let me try to make it easier. It's the time to display something in your website. Let's say a big content on your website, and then the TTFB, which is the time for the first byte, so the first very transfer of your of the request. And so they were measuring this, and they are still. And this was more like measuring thing on how your website is fast, and not only good practice. So they introduced that, and that was in a way much more better. And finally, they have introduced like a few years ago, so the whole user experience and Core Web Vitals, which is
Yep.
really great, but not really perfect at all, especially in the ecosystem of WordPress. So I will talk a little bit more about that, but I would like to first go into what are the practical solution for your WordPress, because I guess if people are on there, is how they can improve the performance of their website, not necessarily the performance score, but really the performance of the website.
Mhm.
And I think that's something I've said like 10 years ago. The first thing is like hosting. You can have the best website, the best caching plugin, everything, but you need first a really solid hosting. And there are two things to consider. First is going into a reliable a reliable company who offer a lot of good things, and with solid offer dedicated to WordPress, and also aligned to your visitor. Because if you take the lowest package, but you have like, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of users every day, I mean, that can't work. So this really need to be aligned. So for that, you need to work. There are tons of good hosting. I guess you can recommend a few one. On our side, we can recommend a lot of good hosting. We don't specifically give name, because it's pretty complex, because it's very also subjective on what are the good hostings. Maybe do you have a few ones that you do recommend instead of, instead of WP for sure, but do you have other people or other
Yeah,
companies?
definitely. So we do offer hosting now. It's called InstaWP Live.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, but there are obviously a lot of good companies out there. I guess as you said, it depends upon the requirement. Don't go for a cheap web hosting for like $1 or $2 per month, right? Um, even though you will get pricing for very cheap, but go for a little bit higher, so that so generally I recommend at least go for the VPS hosting, right, where you get at least the virtual private server, or something with some kind of dedicated CPUs, and then per CPU. So WordPress depends is a generally, I think PHP is a single core process, right? So every core matters. So the configuration of the server also matters a lot.
Mm.
Along those lines, go for a higher end hosting service, not just go for like a low, cheap shared hosting service. That will definitely not work.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, if you think about dedicated WordPress hosting, I wouldn't say that there is one company or several companies who have dedicated WordPress hosting who are really bad. So basically, I would say any hosting company who has really a dedicated and really something where they really did something around WordPress, and ideally who focus first on WordPress, are usually providing a good job to host your website, and which is usually fully compatible with WP Rocket and working well. Basically, as soon as you have a good hosting, it will work perfectly with WP Rocket or any other caching plugins. So another practical solution is number of plugins. It might be not popular. I mean, it's not totally true, because I mean, you can I can show you websites who have hundreds or maybe thousands of plugins, which is super fast. However, there is a reality is, if you add a plugin, usually that will add some code to the server, which will be executed. That this will add some CSS, some JavaScript on a lot of pages, etc. So in general, the more plugins you add, the more bad it will impact your performance. And when I say be careful about the number of plugins, make sure that you don't use multiple plugins for the same thing. Basically, let's say you have a contact form. You use a specific contact form plugin for that, or maybe your team is already providing a contact form solution. Don't install like contact form plugin for doing that. And I'm saying that because we already have seen that, or people are like installing 4 caching plugins because they think this will make their website faster. So just make sure, and this is a reality of performance. It's just a matter of balance, because at the end, the more things you add on your website, the more slow it's going to be. And basically, it's like a car. The more things you put on your car, it's going to be more bigger and it's going to be slower. We can take the example of slider. It's nice to have a slider that looks nice, but at the end, this will impact performance. So you need to do balance. Should I put that, or because this will impact performance? Of course, some are better, which will have less impact, but still, every thing you add on your website will impact performance in a way. So just be careful. Of course, if you have a blank page, that will be super fast, but that's not nice. So it's just a question of balance.
I think it's the balance. Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is always workaround, and that will be in the practical example on how we can improve things on workaround. The other thing is caching plugin, and more than caching plugin is performance plugin. There are tons of them. We at WP Rocket are a web performance plugin, which means that we don't do only caching. We do a lot of front-end optimization, and now our work is mostly doing front-end optimization, because this is what have impact on websites and on page speed and on web core vitals. Another thing is image optimization. It's super easy to do it. You simply have to install a plugin. A lot of are free. For example, we have Imagify into our company. We have a free plan where you can optimize images for free. You can upgrade if you have way too much images, but it's super easy. You don't have anything to configure. This is going to reduce the size of your image without losing quality. So you have really nothing to lose, and this will have a huge impact on your performance. Another thing you can do is having a CDN, which might be useful all the time, because so if you don't know what is a CDN, so basically her website is hosted in one place, a geographical place. A CDN is a way to replicate all your website, but all your static assets, which are images, CSS, JavaScript, everywhere around the world, to make sure that when a visitor is coming far from your server, he's getting served from a server very close. So that makes connection way more faster. So that's helped a lot for our kind of businesses, because, for example, WP Rocket, we have visitors from everywhere, and our website is located in Europe. So if you are visiting our website from US, you need with a CDN that's going to be way more faster. But let's imagine you are, you're in Europe, or let's say Paris. You have a French blog with only French people. Doesn't matter to have a CDN that will impact negatively your performance at a point. This will cost you more, so no reason. So you need CDN is not you shouldn't always use it. There is some point where you need to use it, but not always. And so core web vitals. So to understand. There are a lot to say about it. I will try to be quite quick and to not go deep into detail. So if there are developers,
I think rabbit hole, as much as you dig. Generally, when I see largest content painful, it gives me headache already.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean, right?
Yeah, and this will give you more headache when we are going to see the web. In reality. So first, if there are front-end developers who are listening to that, I'm sorry, I'm going to make things simpler. So what I'm going to say are not 100% true because of the oversimplification of things. Google worked a lot on how they can measure the performance of a website. Have you seen at the beginning they were measuring only with good practices, then with specific numbers, but it was not super accurate, especially with the web, which is constantly changing. And I mean, today you go on a website, it's mostly built fully in JavaScript, with tons of interaction, built in React, with things being loaded after. So websites are really different, and so they really worked on that in order to try to measure the performance. And the way they measure today, and I'm quoting them is how fast a user can interact with the website. And that's really the strong word is interaction. And that's for them performance is when you interact with a website, how fast it's going to be. And from that, they have three things. So the LCP, at the end, it's relatively easy. It's basically they take the biggest element on your website, which is displayed, and they measure how much time it's going to load. Because for them, the concept is the biggest things on which is displayed on your website is the most important thing. So you need to display it very quickly, and so they are measuring how much time, and depending on the time, they're going to give you a grade. So that's the first core web vitals. There are three of them. The second one, so the first is really I mean it's relevant for WordPress websites. The second one is a bit less, so it's cumulative layout shift. So it's how much your website and the template, let's say, of your website is going to change during the load. An example they give is like if your website is being loaded and then you display an ad, we change the layout of your website. This change in a way the website, and this affects user experience, and so they give you a bad grade for that. So it's basically how much your website is changing during the load of it. We don't have that much into WordPress. It's very true when a website is built fully in JavaScript, where there are a lot of interaction, where there are a lot of content which are loaded in a different way, which affect the rendering of the website. It can happen on WordPress on specific things, like imagine you have a JavaScript at the end of your HTML code, which is loading ads. So then it will display the ads, but at the end, so this will have an impact. And then the last one, which is getting changed, is FID, which is going replaced in March to INP. So it's interaction. They are going to measure the first input and how much time it gets to have a result. So basically, when you click on a link, how much time it's going to display the link, or when there is if you click an image and it's going to display something, how much time it's going to take for this interaction. So FID today is only the first, and INP, which is going to replace FID, they are going to measure all the interaction, let's say, to have a better view. And we'll see how we can try to match that into the real world, because that's where it's going.
I think that's the major challenge, right? Means, especially even for like a normal technical person, it's difficult to understand all of these, and then do some like actual action. Uh, I was doing some page speed for our main website, and I realized most of the recommendation by Google doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know what to do next, right? So, can you do some demystification of that today, if possible?
Yeah, I will try, but you will see that's going to be the result. We can't do any. I mean, if you are not really a developer, if you are not developing your themes, most of the thing you won't be able to have any kind of impact. And the only solution, which is good for us, is having a performance plugin, because we are here to solve these issues. But individually, if you don't have like very technical knowledge, it's almost impossible. We'll try with your website. We'll try to find a way to solve things, but most of the time it's super complex. And I mean, and that's the thing that people should understand, and that's what I mentioned in the presentation. First, Core Web Vitals, it's a technical subject. So basically, it's like you put the code, all the code of your website, to something which is going to is the code of your website and which is going to give you feedback. But it's feedback on code, which means that you need to be a developer in a way to understand that. And most of the people on WordPress are not necessarily front-end developers who are not going to understand that. So that's my first feedback is it's super complex. And even like the classic PageSpeed, which were providing only like good practices, was very complex. It's web performance. It's always complex. And most of the WordPress users won't have the solution. So let's try to find some solution, and let's see that in the real world. I hope I will be able to provide.
The problem is that means we as a web developer or a front end developer or a designer, nobody really cares about web performance, right? Don't mind me saying that, because we rely on theme developers, we rely on page builders, we rely on all these different tool sets for them to do their job. But generally, that is not happening in WordPress. And for me, at least, if I see myself, I'm glad that WP Rocket is out there so that I can install it and sometimes just forget about it. So yeah, let's get to see one example. Maybe we can learn something from it. So can I put the new screen on the stage?
Please, if you can put my okay. So what I did basically is I run a PageSpeed test, so Core Web Vitals test, let's say, and web performance test on instawp.com. And so basically what we have is all the information about the Core Web Vitals, but also some other metric there. The first thing we can see is you failed. So let's try how we can help you not failing it. Also to note, which is a bit confusing also for people, by default, it's always giving the mobile score.
Just to stop you there, we already have WP Rocket there on the website. So these recommendations are really helpful. Thank you.
I think that from your website you don't have actually WP Rocket. I think that I've seen Bad Cache, but I didn't see reference from WP Rocket.
Right.
So I believe
that's something we need to figure out. Yep.
Yeah, WP Rocket should be able to solve a lot of these issues, and so that's where we're going to have like technical difficulties, even for like people who understand things but who are not really front-end developers and who are not able to like change their themes. There are a lot of things they are not going to be able to do. So what we can do is the two things are pretty good here. I mean, they are passing, and what is the issue is the LCP. Basically, it's your largest content which takes too much time to load. So the good thing with Google here is you can filter about all the feedback they're providing. So we're going to focus on LCP, and this is the biggest issue. And so basically, sorry, I'm going to go into desktop. It's going to be easier. And basically, if I'm clicking here, that's how they identify your LCP. So that's this block here. And I believe, from what I understand, here isn't an issue because it's just block of text, block of small images, but that shouldn't be an issue. What the big issue, I believe, and I mean, I've seen that from other source, is these images. This is these images and all this block, which is taking a lot of time to load. And the reason of that is because it is first loading external images. I guess you're using gitjar.com to display this content, and which means that I believe a lot of JavaScript are into that part to display that.
Okay.
Because there are some interaction, and on the same time we can see that these images are .jpeg. I believe they are not necessarily optimized. Plus today there are a lot of new formats which can be used, like WebP or AVIF, which reduce a lot of the image. But so basically the issue you have is this specific block. But you will ask, how can we optimize that?
And remove that, right?
Basically, yeah, and that's what I was mentioning is the balance of things. So the only the easiest solution would be to remove it or to replace it and to recode it by yourself. That shouldn't be super hard, but like you would need to
Yeah.
display a few images to make sure to optimize these images, to make sure they're not too big to load, etc. And this will help a lot your LCP, making sure they are lazy loaded. So basically here they are all already loaded. It doesn't really make sense because we need to make sure we load them only when we want to display it. So that would help a lot. But again, you rely on an external resource where you don't control things and which impact a lot your performance. So
Right.
that's one of the issue. However, for example, which impacting your performance is reduce unused CSS. So the idea of CSS and reduce unused CSS is if I'm going into this web page here, so a CSS is a way to display things on a website and to put some style. And let me go on your pricing to make it clear for people. So, for example, you have some CSS rules to display this table, right? But
Right.
this CSS rule, I mean, they exist on your website. We are loading them, but we are not displaying them. And that's the work of remove unused CSS is making sure that on what we load, sorry, on a page is only the CSS which is really on the specific page. So we can remove what is not used and load a CSS different per page, which optimize a lot the performance. And optimize the LCP because we reduce the CSS and that allow the other things to load faster. If we check about other things, but if I'm going back to all, and again, we come back in the issue of core vitals and the things you can't really have an impact. So you have this minimize main thread work. So to understand that, again, it's technical. You need to understand the way border is working and the way JavaScript is working. We say that JavaScript is mono-thread, which means that in a way it can't be executed in parallel, which means that we need to do everything step by step. One JavaScript with one JavaScript extra, which means that your browser has to finish a task, let's say, to display something else. But once we have said that, what do you do on your website? You don't have practical solution unless you are a developer that you do your website, you can adjust things. But
yeah, but nothing is in my control, right? Means I'm just using third-party plugins.
Yes, exactly. And that's so that basically what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to sell our plugin, but that's the reality of things. And there are other plugins who do the same thing. Today, web performance is getting way more complex than what it used to be, because of this core web vital, but which is good. I mean, don't get me wrong. We want good experience and we want a fast website. But my point is we should really focus on the main things like optimize images. For example, I mentioned that you have some images which are not optimized. So you can optimize all of them, but as you can see, I believe that your images are already optimized, but only the one who are loaded from guidejr.com, which you don't control, except that you need to contact this guy telling them, hey, you are affecting badly my performance. You need to optimize your images. And
I already did that. So they said
Okay.
they will, and I'll probably just remove it. Yeah, I think that's the best idea.
Yeah, this you can have directly an impact. That's what WP Rocket can do, or other caching plugin is having good cache policies. So a cache policies is a way to telling to your browser that they should keep into the cache some content because you are not going to change them on a daily basis, let's say, or you're going to change it like once a year. And so, for example, here you have a font and you have an expiration of only 1 day, which doesn't make sense because you tell to the browser every day you need to grab it again. So you would simply need to say, yeah, you can keep it for like 30 days, 90 days. That's or like even more. And usually that's the caching plugins who specific roles into the htaccess, for example, who is going to handle that. Or if you are using a CDN, the CDN also directly generates that. So my point is focus first. So I don't have a magic wand like to solve your core vitals. I believe with WP Rocket or the performance plugin, you can have a good impact, and you can pass the performance. I would be super happy to check after, like with WP Rocket, what are the results, because I'm pretty convinced with a specific option we can improve that a lot. But yeah, focus for you and for the people who are listening to us. Focus on really the basics, on the hosting, on making sure your website loads fast, on optimizing your images, on installing a performance plugin, which would help that. However, so I'm coming back to the...
We do have a question from
Yes.
Mike. Can WP Rocket control the cache expiration time?
Yes, absolutely. It controls the cache expiration time, but I mean, it tells the server how to do it. However, it can happen that the server doesn't understand the rules, so there are some things to do. But yes, that's basically all the caching plugins are doing that in a good way, telling that static asset, which is like CSS, images, JavaScript, they need to store them into the broader cache for like super long time. Can you come back to the presentation and not my share screen? Okay, thanks. Let me try. I can. Okay. Sorry. So to the solution, we have seen that there is no like magic thing we can do. So my first recommendation is with PageSpeed in details, because that's something we can't blame on Google, is how much they document things. They give so many information about website. Of course, most of those things are really for front-end developers with strong experience in JavaScript, because that's the thing. They teach us how to optimize JavaScript, because most of the websites are being done in JavaScript. But still, there are a lot of information you can learn about web performance thanks to Google. So I would really recommend you do a PageSpeed test on your website and really read everything. Take some time and don't check only the results, because that doesn't make sense. You need really to read all the points and see if that can apply to your website, and you can search. I'm pretty sure that you can use GPT to, like, you have this issue on Core Vitals, how can I solve it? And it should probably help you, giving you meaning solution in order to find something, to do something on your website. Clean your WordPress by cleaning, like, don't use too many plugins, because this will load JavaScript, this will load CSS, which will making things too slow. So yeah, also Erwan he's right that tons of fonts and PageSpeed is not perfect. He's trying to give you lots of good content, but yeah, the same. You are loading way too much different fonts. So it's again, because
I wish there was like a dumbed down version of PageSpeed, which tells people don't load so many fonts, right?
Yeah, but
Don't load a third party JavaScript which loads so many things, right?
Yeah, but in the same time, I mean, how you probably don't know how you did that in reality, how you did load all these kind of fonts, but that's because your themes, your page builder allow you to do it, which is good. I mean, that gives you a lot of flexibility, but for the performance, this page builder in the same time would need to make sure that they are also focused on performance. Some are, but it's not perfect. And yeah, there are a lot of things that you will be able to do that. And yeah, we'll be able, and WP Rocket allow you in the same time to host fonts locally, so you don't request them to Google, but still you're loading 5 fonts, and the more you load, the slower it gets. Use a web performance plugin. If you want to use WP Rocket, feel welcome. I've created a dedicated code, so it's instaWP 10, which give you 10% on WP Rocket if you want to use it. There are also other caching plugins which are really good. I mean, a lot of good products in the same time. So my recommendation is test, because we do things in a different ways. Of course, we believe that our way is good, but there are also different ways which are working really well. Optimize your images, and yeah, with really try to. It's a job, and there are a lot of now experts, a lot of people who are really focused on helping you improve your website in terms of performance. That's a job, and that's a super complex job. That's why sometimes if you are not an expert and you want result and you don't want to spend time, that's worth it to check with someone who can help you doing that, because even if you use WP Rocket, sometimes you need extra configuration where we can help, but also someone can help you.
So you are saying that don't hire somebody from Fiverr just to install a caching plugin?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend, especially that most of the time on Fiverr, people just buy unlimited licenses WP Rocket, and we sell it individually, which is against our rules. So it's not really good to do that. But yeah, try if you are stuck, if you have a little bit of budget, I would recommend to try to find really someone who knows what he's talking about, a real expert who is not just going to install something. We try also on our side to put a lot of content into our blog, into our documentation, onto how to configure WP Rocket, how to exclude specific things, how to optimize for performance. But that's the beauty and the complexity
So
of.
you do have some tutorials on the processes
Yeah,
on
we
your
do.
website?
We do have a lot on our documentation on our blog. And so the question about Nginx or Lightspeed. So yes, of course, because it's very different. Nginx is only focusing on it's a server, so maybe there would be some internal cache, but all the front end, all the optimization of the JavaScript, the lazy load, everything we do onto WP Rocket won't be done by Nginx, for example. So it's very, very different. And now most of the work we do is just front-end optimization, which a server doesn't, like Nginx doesn't do.
Right. I think this is something needs to be explained in a separate video on what are the different levels of caching. So Nginx has full page caching, and then you have plugin caching, then you have CDN, then you have the object caching. So that can be maybe an entirely different subject.
We'd
in
be
a
super happy to do another webinar where we go through every kind of caching things, because we are talking
I
about.
think the rule of thumb is very simple. The name is Piero. So Piero, I think you should get a little bit of more knowledge about a web server caching is completely different than an Apple plugin based caching, and that will give you much more clarity on the caching is not just one layer. There is multiple layers of caching to be done, and if you do that right, then your life will be much easier. But then you'll be clearing cache on multiple different portals, then your life becomes a little bit difficult as well at the same time. So let's take the next question. It's a long one. We
I will
have a use case.
try to answer to
Yeah,
that.
please go ahead.
Just one thing about caching, for people to understand. Caching is a concept. Is a concept in software development. Is storing temporary information which is usually calculated, which means that you can put caching everywhere, even on your memory, basically. So we'll need to to do 1 hour about all the layers of caching we can implement on the website. But just to be clear, caching is a global concept. Let me try to answer the question. We'll display dynamic content only to logged in users. So that's the issue with one of the caching we do, is we display the result of the page, which is we are making WordPress, which is dynamic. There are a lot of things which are generated dynamically to something static, which means we can display content differently, let's say. So a solution is to exclude this page. That's true, but that's not the best because we exclude them from cache. So from a good performance point of view, and load dynamic parts with JavaScript, yeah, that's excellent. That's the best things we can do. That's something we wanted in a way to implement it to WP Rocket. So that's called fragment caching or partial caching. But that's super, let's say, complex to find a good way to make it working for everyone. So yeah, if you are a developer and if you are able to implement that with JavaScript, that's really the best you can do.
All right. So Arne is doing it right, basically.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Congrats.
There is another question which we have. Has there been any work with page builders to optimize sites with WP Rocket?
Yeah, our
They
score
have
is
noticed lower side. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, again, that the issue is page builder. I mean, don't let me wrong; they are great and they allow you to do a lot of things. But in order to provide you the flexibility to build basically everything on your website, that's impacting your performance on a bad way. So we are trying to help, let's say, page builder to be optimized, but it's hard. So necessarily, if you use a full page builder, this will impact negatively your performance. So we try to make things better, but for sure, you disable the page builder, you will have a better results. Your website won't look the same, but you will have you will have a better results with performance. So we are also, I mean, working on putting new features which will have a great impact on page builder results. Let's say, but yeah, as soon as you use something which is extremely complex, and I'm not blaming page builder because what they do is super complex, and of course they need to complexify the HTML extra. That will impact web performance. And yeah, agree that for me the best, but it's not available for everyone. That would need some development is like using the native solution of WordPress with Gutenberg block, which is excellent, but no, not everyone can use it in a super easy way, like Elementor or Beaver Builder is doing.
Right. I think unless and until page builder starts to think performance first, that they are going to have a very hard time. Especially now, Gutenberg is everything is in Gutenberg is performance first mentality.
Yeah.
Although they need some time to catch up with features. And I think Arne has given a very nice recommendation that don't use a lot of third-party packs on top of Elementor. I
Yeah.
know a lot of agencies use Elementor and Elementor Pro, and they get good results. So do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't use. I mean, it's again, if you really need something, you have to use it, because if you need a specific feature, you need to use it, but that could impact performance. So there is a question of object caching using Redis or Memcache. So again, caching layer. Let me try to explain in an easy way what is object cache. So it's related to PHP. So PHP in a way is working with objects, and these objects are being refreshed all the time you refresh a page, because they are into memory. So let's say, so they're going to be lost, and we need to recalculate PHP. We need to recalculate things. So there is a way is to save these objects into another cache, which saves these elements longer and which are super faster. And so that's what we use, why we can use Redis or Memcache, which are it's just a database, but a very fast database in a way, which allow you to store whatever you want. So you can store page, but you can also store object caching. So yeah, we definitively recommend using Redis, and with object caching, but that might not work all the time. It's really, yeah, again, very technical. This won't necessarily have a super impact. It depends on your website. If you have like a big WooCommerce website with tons of orders and a lot of data, that can help you a lot. But like if you have a simple blog, you won't see any kind of difference.
All right. So I think Aaron has said something which is a little bit beyond my understanding.
Yeah, so what they are debating is a way is like, so PHP is giving a score, but now also what is really good is they give what is called Crux, which is real data from user visiting website, which are putting data back to Google, and so real user data, and that's what a user will really feel as a performance. And so that's the way of monitoring things, and definitively that's the best, but that's really going deep into details. So I would, of course, recommend to someone who is just having his website, trying to optimize his WordPress, to first focus on their page speed score. Of course, going I mean, it's an infinite thing. You can optimize everything up to the end, but yeah, the basic is I mean, most of the websites we see, they don't do the basic things. You still mute.
Sorry, one question I have is that does Google recognizes every page separately, or it only cares about the home page?
They recognize every page separately, and in the same time, if you think about, how they do rank every pages, when you search into Google, you don't have only your home page. You have every page is like being
Exactly. So every page needs to be optimized, right?
Yes, every page should be optimized. I believe, I don't have proofs, or probably they have documented that you have kind of score for your website. So probably they would say, yes, this website is more or less fast, but there are some pages which are maybe slower. So we'll penalize them. And probably they have average of your performance for a specific website. I don't really know,
Right.
but that probably true, because they are visiting all your pages, and that costs them to visit your pages and to analyze what you write in order to position into SEO. So the more they are going to wait for you to give content, the more it's going to cost for them in the same time, because that's quite costly to visit all the website they are visiting. So that's also a reality of cost for Google as well.
That's true. That's true. All right. I think we are done with the questions. If there is anything else, please feel free to ask in the next 1 minute. But JB, thanks for being on the call.
Yeah, thank you
Really
for inviting me.
enjoyed the entire presentation. What I learned is that you cannot be very, very knowledgeable about each and every aspect of your website performance. Then
Yep.
Arni shared a very insightful data that optimize how the website is, how you are feeling when you're using a website, and then that will eventually be the main criteria for everything, right?
Yeah.
And choose a better web hosting, do caching on every layer depending upon your use cases. So a lot of learnings. Maybe we can have you another time for talking about different layers of cache at different entry points. And again, thanks everybody for being on this webinar. Really appreciate you engaging with JB today. And thanks for your questions. And
Yeah,
have a
thanks a
great
lot.
day. Have a great night wherever you are. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.